All right, time for another video. So I'm going to go back into this batch. I'm thinking about napping this one, but I'd rather nap this one. I think this is a heat treat. This piece of coral. I knocked some flakes off. Let's see. Let's see. What does it say? Something coral. I don't know. Yeah, I don't have any. I don't have the complete. It could be like a number. I don't know. Something. I don't know. If that says heat on that side, I don't know what that is there. But it's probably just one word, so I don't know. I'm going to try napping it. It's been so long since I've looked at this batch that I have no idea. But we're going to get an idea. Yeah, it might be neat to get this two-tone in the point as well. Try to incorporate some of that. Of course, I don't really make too much of an effort to incorporate the different colors because then it messes with the napping. It's best just to nap it into a point, and if you get some of the color, you get some of the color. If not, oh well. Yeah. It complicates the issue trying to save portions of the napping because inevitably what happens is when you try to save a color, that spot ends up being a little bit lumpy, or since you don't want to lose it, it prevents you from napping into it to remove a obstacle. And if the only way to remove the obstacle is through that color, you're going to say nah, and that obstacle or that mistake is going to stay in there. Yeah, so you have to make a choice. Do you want the color or the obstacle? If you can't stand having that obstacle or defect in the finished point, then you'll have to lose the color. So I make that decision up front. I'm always going to lose the color. I'm not going to try to preserve it. If it comes down to having it colorful or a nice clean biface, I always choose a nice clean biface. Yeah. It seems to nap well. Oh yeah. So when it naps well, it's usually a heat treat. When it's coral. I've napped this stuff raw. Maybe not this exact stuff, but I've napped coral in a raw state and it's not fun. And what it is petrified coral. It's not just coral you pick up out of the ocean and just start napping it. No, it has to be silicified or contain silica, which happens very, very slowly over time. Yeah, millions of years, or at least hundreds of thousands, I don't know. I'm not a geologist. So yeah, it naps like a chert. Yep. Of course, it's not exactly like a chert, but it's very close. It feels a little bit more brittle than a chert. A chert feels a little more flexible, but this seems pretty good because the terminations look pretty good. You know, if it's all steppy, then it usually means that it's not that great. But this is napping well, even through this lighter color area. I'm surprised. Yeah. So I got the basic shape. Now it's when it starts to get stressful. And I'm not going to make it difficult on myself. I'm going to switch over to indirect percussion. Yeah. Now to preserve this, I can force myself to eliminate a lot of this side. That way I have to use, or have to preserve the width and keep it, because in general it's keeping the width. See, if I make it narrower, but remove that side, I have no choice. If I maximize it, I will be including some of this. You know what I mean? But I don't like doing that all that much, you know? I will do it a little bit here. I'll take some of this off. I might regret it later because this material is really good. And this material might not be easy to thin, so I'm taking a risk. But I do want to try to preserve some of that. Okay. Putting my glove on because I'm going to be hitting it pretty hard with the indirect percussion. I was not hitting it very hard with the bopper. 5.0 ounce. Yeah, when I hit really hard with the indirect percussion flaker, those flakes fly very, very fast. Someone asked me, does it hurt when I hit the workpiece? Does this workpiece bang into my fingers or my hand? Does this hurt? Nope. If I'm doing it right, it doesn't hurt at all. I can hold it with 2 fingers and take a flake. See that? It doesn't wobble very much or anything. There's no hurt involved. If you're not doing it right and you're too slow, it's going to jerk. It's going to feel like it's pounding into your hand. It's going to transfer the energy instead of removing a flake. If you're too slow with the hits, or you know, it's going to transfer the energy into your hand instead of powering off a flake. You know, the flake won't come off. So where is that energy going? Into your hand. Now, I've got a callus, or I got a bone spur, or I got something built up inside my hand. See that lump right there? That's from hundreds of hits against the middle of my hand. So I do have that lump here that was not there before I began my napping adventure many years ago. But I've developed a lump. This one doesn't have it. This one has it right there. And I think it's protecting a little bone or something in my hand. I can feel that pad naturally built up in there. That's the only thing that has happened with this indirect percussion. But most of the time, I feel that when I'm doing direct percussion. When I'm hitting with direct percussion is when I'm feeling this. Indirect percussion, very rarely do I have to back it up into my hand like that for a really strong hit. But with the with direct percussion with the boppers, I'm often holding it so it bumps up against that little bump right here in my hand. Yeah, it bumps up against a bump. I was hesitating to use the word bump twice, but can't get away from it. And I use the glove because even though it doesn't hurt to hit, it does flake very fast, and it can cut my fingertips, especially right in this area on my middle and ring fingers. It'll cut right in those areas very frequently because that's where the flakes usually come off, here and here. So they hit this part of my fingers. So it's advantageous to use the gloves if I'm going to be hitting really hard. All right. Yeah, I can use some of these for little beady arrowheads. It's a nice color, so it's my favorite. I save my favorite color whenever I can. And it is a nice yellow. So, even though I think it is a heat treat, it's still not that great in terms of nappability. I'm finding it resisting the strikes. Yeah, but it terminates well, so that's important. Yeah. It wants to not break at the end, which is good. I mean, there is stiff fracturing there, but I don't think it's hard to pick those off. I think they're just incomplete. Let me see before I open my big mouth. Yeah, somebody said there's an echo now with the new microphone. There's an echo. Well, I have the door open. Maybe the echo isn't so bad now. See, that was just an incomplete flake. This one, oh, that was a hard step. That was just an incomplete. Yeah. The hard step means it doesn't flake off easily. This one flakes off easily. See that? A hard step is something that won't flake off easily. It's stepped right there. There doesn't seem to be anything underneath that. Well, maybe there is a little bit. When I say there doesn't appear to be anything underneath, what I mean by anything is a continuation of that flake underneath. Does it continue or does it stop right there? Does the break stop here or is there a little bit underneath? That's what I mean by anything underneath. What I mean by the thing is the fracture. Is there a crack under this? Like, is this overlapping that? Or is just the crack is stopped right there? If it's overlapping, I can pick it off. Pick off the overlap. And if it's good quality stuff, usually there is an overlap. If it's bad quality stuff, it's a hard stop. And just because I have the glove on doesn't mean that I'm hitting really, really hard every time. The glove is just for the times when I'm hitting hard. I don't always hit hard. But if I need to, I got the glove. I don't have to keep taking it off and putting it back on. That was a hard hit. And see, it went between these two fingers. And if I don't have a glove on, this can slice right into there. Yep. Hit really, really hard on that one too. But it didn't go over the top of that. It just scooped it, which is not good. That means I gotta hit it really, really, really hard. Yeah. Okay. I should probably do some of these really, really, really hard hits with the billet or the bopper. Yes, yes. Why do I take the glove off? I need the feedback. I'm not quite sure if this is a good idea. Yeah, okay, that worked. That was a good idea. Without the glove, I have a little bit better feel for what's going on with the stone. I don't know how to explain it. And there's less chance of cutting myself with these relatively slower hits with the bopper. These are slower hits than with the percussion flaker. I can't swing this nearly as fast as I can swing the mallet because the mallet has a lot more distance between my hand and the impact zone. And I can extend this impact zone all the way. I can extend the distance between my hand and the impact zone to the very end, and that's very fast. If I choke up on it and hit it like that, it's slower. It's just the same speed as the billet or the bopper. But if I extend the hit out to here, there's a lot more velocity on the end of this mallet. Okay, so I adjust that, and sometimes you can't see. You can't see that I adjust this here or there. You know what I'm saying? It's all subconscious whether I hit here, here, or here. For the most part. Sometimes I consciously say, okay, I need to hit a really, really fast to get a long flake, so I use the upper portion of the mallet. I think sometimes people don't catch that, or I don't explain it well. I use this part of the mallet, I think, for that hit. It needed a big, long flake, so there's a lot of energy. The longer the flake, the more energy is required. You can't get around it. Now, there are some times when you can prepare for the long flake and it doesn't require nearly as much energy. Like when you follow a ridge like this, that doesn't require as much energy as, let's say I just followed a fat spot without much of a ridge. I can hit into this area, but see, the ridge is not pronounced. The more pronounced the ridge, the easier it is to run that flake. As long as it's not too deep. If it's a deep flake, yeah, that requires a lot of energy. But if it's not a deep flake or a deep fake, it'll run without much energy. All right. But I'm going to put a lot of energy to see if it'll scoop out a lot. And it did, but it terminated too soon. I don't know why. I don't always know why this stuff does what it does. I'd rather have a short termination with a no step fracture than have it go long and then start diving. I hate dives. I don't like it when the flakes start diving. It could ruin your whole day when it's getting thin. If they start diving, I'm going to do a video on autism. So I'm thinking about that. Oops. Where is it? I bumped against the microphone. I've been thinking about doing a video on autism. I'm not an expert. What I'm going to be doing is I'll tell you what I'm doing with the autism that runs in my family. How I'm dealing with it and what I'm learning about it. You asked me about 10 years ago about this subject, I'd be completely in the dark. Yeah. Even though my boys have autism, we didn't really understand what was going on. We just thought it was slow development. They're just kind of behind in their social development and language skills. We had no idea. We thought autism was extremely debilitating. We didn't realize that it doesn't always manifest in that way. It's not always extremely debilitating. It can be, but it doesn't always. I mean, even if you look normal, you can be extremely debilitated because you have comorbidity, a comorbidity like ADHD and that kind of thing. It's very common with people with autism. It can be debilitating even though you look normal because of the comorbidities. ADHD can make you much less likely to do stuff that you want to do. Even though you want to do something, you just don't do it because it doesn't feel right. Not today. It's just, today is not my day. That kind of thing. And then the next day comes along. Yeah, today is not my day. Still not my day. It just doesn't feel right. And it has to do a lot with the chemicals in the brain. I was reading today about serotonin and dopamine. I've already read quite a bit on those, but it's good to keep reading on it. There's always new developments. It's actually a rather new field of study. There's a lot of factors that go into the cause of autism. It's not only genetic, but it can be epigenetic or environmental during the development of the fetus and early childhood, I think. I gotta keep reading on it. But anyway, I will do a video or two, or maybe start a little series on autism. I got a ton of workarounds whenever I encounter the executive dysfunction, because I do have some ADHD symptoms. I got workarounds. And also the importance of diet when it comes to brain function. Diet will not cure autism, but the lack of a good diet certainly makes it worse. Yes, it makes the autism worse. I recommend going on an elimination diet. Eliminate whatever makes you feel sick. If that's everything, then it's everything. Some people, the only thing they can eat, and I'm sure you've heard of this, only thing they can eat is grass-fed beef and water. Yeah. They've eliminated what makes them feel sick. What makes you feel sick? Everything except meat and water. There are people like that. I have to eliminate almost all plants from my diet and be very careful about the dairy that I eat. The dairy that I eat has to be high in lactic acid. Yeah, which means yogurt and cottage cheese. Other cheeses, I love them, but I can only eat little bits, and I cannot drink, milk and that kind of thing, just raw. It's got to be a cheese or the fat from it, like butter. I can eat butter. That kind of thing. But if I eliminate what makes me feel sick, I eliminate most foods. Yeah. And it's not only the feeling of physically sick, but mentally sick. You can get anxiety and all sorts of bad side effects just from your food. And it can also mess with your dopamine metabolism, serotonin systems, and all this kind of stuff can get affected by your diet. All right. I recommend an elimination diet for everybody because you should not be eating stuff that makes you feel sick. in general, but it's especially important with people who have psychological difficulties or neurodivergent brains. Diet is extremely important. Yeah, a lot of the good brain chemicals come from the gut and how you're digesting things. Yeah. So I'll get into that a little bit. I won't get into it too much during these napping videos. I'm hitting extremely hard right there. And it didn't do much. So it's inconsistent. Some of it's easy to nap, and some of it is not. Yeah. So I'm just picking at it. I'm not sure how thin I can get it, because see how crackly it gets once it starts getting thin? Crackly right there. Crackly just means there's weird fracturing. It's not smooth. It gets all like this, where it wasn't doing that earlier. It's because I'm using more inward force. It changes everything. Just a subtle change in inward force can mess everything up or make everything beautiful. Yeah. The inward forces to create a thin point are highly subtle and nuanced, right? The word of the day these days is nuanced. It all depends on the stone. You can have the best technique in the world, but if that technique doesn't work for the particular piece of stone, you've got to adapt and overcome. Yeah. As the saying goes, whenever you're fighting a little conflict, you have to adapt and overcome. And you are in conflict with the stone. Even though I know it doesn't have any feelings, it doesn't want to do what you want to do. It's highly resistant. People make a big deal out of nappers who have a lot of control over the flakes. Yeah, that is a big deal, and that's what you want. But it can drive you nuts as a flint napper. And that's counterproductive. If it starts driving you nuts, you're not going to nap well. I don't try for all that much control, but I am going to show you some techniques that I need to practice up on that do require lots of control of the flaking. And we're going to get into techniques that are very similar to what the flake over grind guys use. Flake over grind or fog. When I start doing these eat-in points, it's very similar to what the flake over grind guys are doing. And people are funny because they consider the flake over grind a modern technique that is to be shunned. Yeah. But it was It was done to a certain extent in the past, yeah. Maybe not with grinding, but with little minute flaking to shape the surface. It's actually easier to shape the surface with minute flakes than it is to grind it down to shape. So that's what they did. They could have ground it down to shape and then flaked over it, because they were grinding stones to make celts and axe heads and ornaments. They were grinding these stones, banner stones, at a lot of weights. They knew how to grind down the stone and then flake over it. They just didn't do it because you don't need to. If it's flakeable, it's easier just to flake it into a nice, smooth surface. It's easier because it takes less time once you learn it. Yeah. Of course, it takes years to learn it, but once you put in the time to learn it, it doesn't take much time to generate copies, which is what they did in the past. They generate copies of what they learned to make. They don't learn knapping so they can do many different styles. They learn the knapping so they can do one style, primarily. That's the way they used to knap back in the day. You learn how to knap so you can make that one style of point. Yeah. So if you want to know how they did it back in the day, they just focused on one style. That's it. Maybe two, maybe three. Who knows? It depends on how you're hunting. Are you using a variety of hunting techniques or strategies? Are you hunting many different types of game? Are you encountering many different types of materials that need to be knapped in different ways? It's variable, yes, but for the most part, back in the day, you learned how to knap so you can knap one style of point. And there were various ways that you can make that one style. You didn't necessarily learn one way to knap. You learned to knap in general to make a specific type. And those specific types were made in different ways. How do I know this? Because that's what the brain naturally does. You can see it from modern knappings and the way people are in modern times. We have not changed all that much in our brain function. Yeah. People learn to knap in different ways to make the same point these days. So I think it's logical to assume that's the way they used to do it back in the day as well, because our brains are not that much different, if any. If any different at all. Probably not different at all. Same issues. I believe they had autism as well. ADHD. Oh yeah. Neurodivergence and depression and all kinds of weird stuff. Yeah. Psychopathy, narcissism, Machiavellianism. All that stuff existed back in the day, just like it does now. And it does affect the Flintknapping. Yep. OCD, ADHD, all of it. It existed back in the day. PTSD, everything. Now, there are environmental factors that contribute. They're thinking there's environmental factors involving chemical contaminants in the environment that could cause autism as well, or exacerbate it. Look it up. Do I believe that jabs, so-called, have anything to do with it? I don't know. That's a tough one. I don't approve of giving the jabs all at once in one big cocktail. Yeah, that seems stupid. And dangerous. But other than that, I don't know. And yeah, my children had all their vaccinations. You gotta be careful. We still are in an environment that is highly monitored for compliance with certain health imperatives, let's say. So I've got to be careful what I say. But I can talk about autism. Yeah. So far, the coast is clear. Yep. What I'm doing now is just making the surface more smooth and trying to take out some lumps. And some of the lump attacks are producing step fracturings, so I got to remove those. Yeah. It doesn't really like damage control, this stuff. Let's see if I can pick some of that out. Yeah, it's a hard step. Yeah. That was it, okay? What's going on here? There it goes. Then it's not so bad. It's not too bad now. It is rough right there. It's grainy right in there. Oh yeah, just because it's grainy doesn't mean it's hard to nap. Yeah, it does fool you. You know, in the majority of cases, I think that it's safe to say that the more grainy it is, the harder it is to nap. But not always. And it can fool you if you're looking at an artifact. You say, "Oh, this is grainy, but look how well made it is." That means that they had some sort of awesome talent and a miraculous skill. No, it was probably not that hard to nap. Yeah. You have to assume that it's really not that difficult because they had so many other things to worry about in life that they just don't have time to deal with the bad material. If there was bad material, they would say, well, we'll just make a karate point from it and make doo-doo with what we got. Yeah. They wouldn't try to spend all that much time trying to make a beautiful point out of something that would drive everybody else crazy, except for the neurodivergents that are over there pounding on rocks. What are you neurodivergents doing over there? We're just sharpening rocks, okay? Don't worry, you'll like it. And sure enough, yeah, everybody likes it. I gotta eliminate that step fracture because it looks bad. Yeah, it's all political. Yeah, it's all for looks. It's all for show. That's not good. I'm thinning the other side so it doesn't look like a curve is starting. I was thinking about that too the other day. Sometimes thinness happens incidentally because you're trying to remove obstacles and prevent the look of a curvature. Yeah, so you have to take out material that you wouldn't normally remove, but you risk the thinness because you want it to be straight. It's best to have a straight blade on a projectile. So you risk it and thin it down to get rid of some of the bumps and curves. Where in a perfect world, you'd probably make it a little bit thicker. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Thinness is not always because it is easy to resharpen, although that's one of the reasons. I think one reason for thinness is because you got to get rid of lumps. And curves. You got no choice but to thin it down a little bit more so you can get to that area. Or you have no choice but to have it become thinner as you're dealing with these obstacles. It's just the way it is. It's incidental thinning. Someone might say, yeah, you got that super thin, man. I'm glad that was your objective. You're a great thinner. And you say, no, that wasn't really my objective. My objective was just cleaning the surface. It got thin because I had to run so many flakes. And you go, you're just being modest. No, dude, that's the reason. Sure. Come over here, guys. Look, here's a modest person. Yeah. What are you going to do? You're right. It's modesty. Told ya. When it's not really modesty, it's like I'm trying to tell you guys, in the process of eliminating defects, it's going to thin down. Okay. Got some of that still there. Some of that light color. I'm going to try not to nap all the way through it, but see, I'm left with 2 more or 3 more flakes that I got to flake from this light color material. And the reason why that ended up that way is because I'm trying to preserve the light color material. It's a last resort. Napping through there is a last resort. And guess what? I got to nap through there. Where's my file? I've got a bunch of files from Mike, Mr. Tufts, but I don't have them available in 5 seconds. Or do I? No. I don't know where I stuck them. They're supposed to be on top. Oh, but they're not on top. Okay. They're somewhere in the mess. Yeah, I scooped it out a little bit much, but I didn't want to take any chances of step fracturing it. Yeah. But now I gotta scoop out the other side. Yeah, a little bit. See, I scooped that out a lot just because I didn't want to take a chance on it being steppy again. So I hit it really hard. Now it looks a little bit lumpy on the other side. I might be able to reduce it slightly on the other side. I'm going to take the edge down this way, see what it looks like. If I have a good avenue of attack, I'll attack this side as well. And yeah, it's getting thinner, but it's incidental. I can leave it that way. It doesn't have to be completely straight to be a good, effective projectile point, although the straighter it is, the better. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight. Yeah, I'm risking it too because I'm pushing the limits of the material. Yeah, I can't be hitting it too much. I was going to say too often. I hit it often. I just can't hit it with too much force is what I mean. Because the limits of the material might rear its ugly head. Oh yes, the limits is ugly. Limits are always ugly. Yeah. You mean I can't do it? Rock says, no, can't do it. Dang it. You ugly. You is ugly. Telling me that. This is the truth. It's one of the laws. Let's see, is that good enough? I think that's good enough. Even though it's, I know I could do one more flake in the area. I'm not gonna. I'm gonna pick out some of these little things. And then that's it. They're not picking right. It's tough. It's tough, grainy material. Yeah, but I'm going to leave it. Yeah, because otherwise I would have to nap through this light color material. I don't want to nap through it. Nope. All right, so let's get this wrapped up. Let's wind down. We're gonna start coasting downhill now. Yep. Let our foot off the gas a little bit. Coast downhill. Let some of that sweat dry up. Yeah. It's always a relief when they get past the sweat stage. All right. Dang. It's tougher than I thought. Yeah, but it's not too bad. Yeah, I missed my file. Where is it? I'm just going to get one of those other files for the next video if I can remember. And remember, boys and girls, it's not the same amount of pressure with each pressure flake. Every pressure flake is different. When it's wonky like this, the longer I take to do these pressure flakes, the more predictable they are, right? So that's one of the rules. If you want these flakes to be predictable, you've got to really plan these out and make sure the edge is just right. Make sure your flaker tip is just right for your particular style. Make sure the pad is just right. Make sure you're not too tired. Make sure your fatigue level is just right. Everything has to be just right. You not only have to control the flakes, you have to control the initial conditions of you, not just the flakes. You have to be fit. Yeah. You're not too tired from what you just did. If you're really, really tired from all that percussion, or you're stressed and you didn't really deal with the sweat stage very well, you're all frazzled, you're not going to get good at doing this stage. You're going to enter this stage all frazzled and you're not going to want to do it. Subconsciously, it's like a chore. Like, oh man, this better go good or I'm going to throw it. You better go good. You got me in a bad mood. You better do it right, stone, or the stone's going to get me in a bad mood. You know. That's what will happen. You've got to be mentally still with it once you reach this stage, because this stage is very, very important. I can't over stress how important the final finishing is. I cannot overstate how important the final finishing is. It's extremely important. It's like the home stretch in a race. I would argue it's probably the most important stage in the whole race, is the home stretch, because it can dramatically change your chances of winning. Yep. And if you have to put it down and pick it up tomorrow to do the pressure flaking, do it. It's worth it. It's worth taking the day off after you've done a good percussion session. Take as much time off as you need to do the next stage, which is the finishing stage, or the sharpening. Yeah, do it with some fresh muscle power, fresh brain power. That's my advice. Yeah. I'm going to finish it off in the next segment when I'm doing only the notching. Okay? Alrighty. Let's see. Can I get a good snapshot? Right there, maybe. Let's change the perspective. Yeah. I just need to be able to see the outline well. I wasn't able to see the outline well in one of the other thumbnails. I didn't get a good picture. Alrighty. There you go. That's it.